Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us again this morning online for another exciting edition of the Ashworth Virtual Worship. And as you can tell this morning, I've got my good friends with me, Pastor Ryan and Pastor Amy joining us. And we're going to have a conversation this morning because this week we're kicking off a new series, and it's kind of tied to an entire campaign that we're doing. And it's going to be called The New Normal. And basically, the reason we've come up with this is because, number one, you have heard that phrase everywhere. That is, we are not original in coming up with this great idea. Hey, let's create a new normal. No, it's everywhere. And so we're going to just lean into this and talk about what does this mean? And I think we just begin by recognizing that, the world has changed. The world has changed. And the biggest question is, will it go back? But as the world has changed, we've kind of been inundated with all these new words and acronyms and expressions that we have to get used to.
And you know that it's starting to become normalized because we all recognize them, even from acronyms. We can say WFH. And a lot of us go, oh, yeah, that's work from home.
I'm glad those were the three letters you picked and started with W.
And 6 feet, everybody knows what 6 feet is. Before, you'd have been like, what meaning does that carry? It's how far we stay.
Yeah, what does social distancing even mean?
And to even say socially distanced is such an odd phrase, but all of us say it. Everybody's talking about it all the time. These are the things that just, while they were completely unique several months ago, they have become normal. And likely going forward, we're going to be talking about a 6-foot rule and staying socially distanced for a long time.
Absolutely. And, not only are there new words and phrases, but there's new behaviors that are acceptable. I think, Ryan, you and I were talking earlier this week, like I'm an ex-banker. Before, you would never have walked into a bank wearing a mask. Now you're ostracized or looked down upon if you're not. I mean, Go figure, right?
I was just thinking that. I got in the car last night to go somewhere on my once a week outing. And I just looked down and there's 3 masks laying right in my console. It's just a normal thing now. You got to grab a mask on your way out.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I wash my hands more than once a day.
Yes.
That's some of these changes we're very grateful for, very appreciative of. Yeah. But as we think about even these silly examples, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it has really begun to change my mindset about things. Because I noticed that when I'm in the store and then people start getting close to me in a store, I'm keenly aware of that. And I wasn't a toucher before this whole thing, but now I am a 6-footer. And I'm like, if you get any closer to me, I'm going to cough on you just to make you wonder if I've got it or not, I mean, and so it's rewired our brains a little bit in interacting with people. Even standing outside, we've had some guys here at the church this week that are, working on the grass, working on the landscape, putting new mulch in, which I'm very thankful these guys do. But even in this conversation, normally you'd be together face to face. And I mean, now it's just you.
It's terrible.
You hate this, don't you, Amy?
I hate it.
Yeah.
I feel loved when someone accidentally breaks this 6-foot rule and brushes my shoulder,
But Ryan, I feel like we should lift our arms and just embrace Amy right now in a virtual hug to make her feel better. When this began, I remember, that first Sunday I was out of town and we made a last minute decision not to meet because of community spread. And then the next week we ran the play. But as we were talking behind the scenes about how long will this go, you guys remember, we're like, maybe hopeful thinking we might be back for Easter. Well, we blew past Easter. We've now blown past Mother's Day. And Father's Day, honestly, is a question mark. I mean, we still don't know whether or not we'll be back together. And the challenge is that it has become a new normal. Our brains are beginning to be rewired a little bit. How we think about things, how we think about shopping, how we think about faith, all these things are changing. And that's really what has led us to this new normal series. The new normal that I think we're facing as a church, it doesn't scare me. In fact, I'm really ready to embrace it. Now, I realize for some people, back up, I am an early adopter on everything. We all know this about Brent. I want it before it comes out to the mass market. And I know that in our church, we also have people that are slower adopters and late adopters. And so this, Ryan raised his hand, that's him. So in this moment, when we talk about change, some people look at this and they go, I can't wait till we get back to the way it was. The reason we wanted to sit down today is because I'm not convinced we can get back to the way things were. I'm not convinced that we even should. That should be our pursuit. Not to say that we're never going to have it the way it was, but maybe our focus needs to shift just a little bit before we, embrace and just turn back and go, okay, let's just act like this last 10, 11 weeks never happened,
Because I don't think that it's reasonable to believe that we can have, they say 30 days to create a habit. A lot of people have been creating new habits.
Yes.
And just because they're allowed to go back to church does not mean that all of a sudden their habits are going to snap back to what they were used to. And so just patterns of way people live is going to have changed. And so if we want to be a church, and I think if you've been a part of Ashworth for very long at all, you recognize we're a church that wants to reach our neighborhood, our community, and find where they're at and be right there amongst them. Mm-hmm. And so that's why even as we're thinking about this new normal, we're asking the question, what are the types of things we can do as a church to be where we think people are going to be in this new normal situation?
As we were talking about this, I thought back to Jesus when he was dealing with the things he was dealing with. And it's in 3 of the Gospels, and Jesus was always confronted. And in Luke chapter 5, he's being confronted because, John's disciples fast and pray, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees, but yours go on eating and drinking. And Jesus answers them, can you make the friends of the bridegroom fast while he's with them? But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them. In those days, they will hold fast. And then he told them this parable. He says, no one tears a piece out of a new garment to patch an old one. Otherwise, they will have torn the new garment, and the patch from the new will not match the old. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, new wine must be poured out into new wineskins. And no one after drinking old wine wants the new, for they say the old is better.
When we look at this parable that he teaches with the new wineskins, the old wineskins, in our current situation, we have to look and say, what Jesus is saying is when a moment calls for something new wine, you can't go put it in the forms and structures of the old. Yeah. It's not going to work. You're going to break the old forms and structures. You would never put new wine and mix it with old wine. It's going to make it terrible. You let the old wine be. It's good, but you have to create new wineskins to hold the new wine. We have a moment where people are establishing a new rhythm in life, new patterns. Some people have no interest in ever stepping foot inside a church. And we can't say, hey, you need to go to our old structures. Yeah. Instead, what we have to do is figure out how can we create new structures for where people are at today. Because while culture changes and the pandemic changed everything for us, it did not change the mission of Jesus' people, that we are to continually be looking for the best ways that we can to bring Jesus into the lives of people who need his hope, his love, and his grace into their lives. Mm-hmm. And so it just points us to needing to figure out a new way to reach new people, not necessarily to change everything for everybody, but to have that structure for us to continue reaching
Absolutely.
out.
But I can tell you, even as we talk about that, even as we say that change word, that really can strike fear into a lot of people, because there is a comfort in routine and the known and the normal, the old normal. I mean, there's a lot of comfort there, but we know that a lot of people respond very differently when it comes to change. What do you guys see when you think about change? I mean, Ryan, you said you're a late adopter. How does change affect you?
I like it if I'm leading it and have control. It's all about if you don't have control of that change, that you feel a little bit afraid of what is happening. What does this mean for me? What am I going to lose I think that's the biggest fear is, what am I going to lose that I maybe hold dear or I like that you're now telling me I have to give up?
Right. And we should say again, the goal here is not to just rip everything away. We want to find a way that we can balance what was, keep what is good from the old, but also find ways to do the new and find some type of way to bring these together under this heading of Ashworth Church.
It makes me think of just in my work over the years in ministry with InterVarsity, I've had to lead some major changes. And so I did some reading on this man who's like particularly studied the idea of change and how it moves in our hearts and particularly Christians and thinking about the kingdom of God. And he talks about what you're just saying, Brent, where it's like we have an ending and then you have this kind of neutral zone of a lot of waiting. And I don't know about you, but I've been feeling that big time the last couple of weeks. So like the ending was hard for me. I cried a lot at the beginning. I felt the loss of a lot of things. And then this neutral zone, but then I had kind of the adrenaline to power through and keep going like, oh, this is a new thing. Let's try this, this new platform online and changing our whole lives. And there was a little adrenaline that came with that. And then this neutral zone that we're in, I feel like it's hard. We've kind of got beyond some of that adrenaline and some of the like trying new things and changing.
The newness has worn off sitting at your kitchen table.
Yeah, exactly. The newness has worn off. We're weary. And we're not at our new beginning yet. We don't know what our new normal really looks like. I mean, we have an idea of how things have changed, but we don't know what church is going to look like exactly, or what school is going to look like, or what work is going to look like, going back to the office, and how our family is going to function. And sitting in that neutral zone is really hard, I think. And I think there's like a couple of options for people. And one of the options that I feel a lot of days is like, I just want to be done. I'm out. Like, how do I check out and, put my head in the sand? I'm just like exhausted and weary. Or I want to go back to the old way, but God actually invites us to release that. There's an ending and we release that of the way things were. We can be sentimental and thank God for those days, but those days are not now and they're not the days ahead. And so how do we actually lean into that neutral zone? And what this author talks about, William Bridges, he talks about how in the neutral zone, if you choose in, and instead of checking out or getting angry or looking to the past, there is something that the Holy Spirit does in this neutral zone, because there's room for the Holy Spirit to move, because we don't have all these structures and we don't have all these plans and all this order. We're praying and we're seeking God. And that's something we're doing as a staff a lot. We talk every week about what is God inviting us into? What's the next expression of our church in this time? And I think that's where I get joy right now, is like, oh, actually, the Holy Spirit wants to speak to us. As we were just talking about, as we've been meeting to record worship sets on Thursday nights, the Holy Spirit has been doing something in our midst. He's been speaking to us and he's been moving, and we're starting to taste like some of the new things that he's doing. And what I would say is the new wine, like there's a new wine for us in new expressions of church. And I think about, when we think about the wineskins, I'm like, what is the new wineskin? A new wineskin is flexible. It's elastic. It's stretchy.
It has to be.
Yes. And so I'm thinking, as you're talking today, I'm like, how can I make sure that my heart is stretchy and I'm not holding on to what was, or angry in the neutral zone or weary in the neutral zone? But how can I keep, my heart elastic and stretchy and flexible to what God is inviting us to as a church and inviting me to experience? Because I want the new wine,
Right. And so the opposite of that is kind of recognizing our own desire to resist and kind of dig our heels in and say, I'm not moving. Yeah. This is a process. We have no expectation that when we say things or do things that everybody's right there with us.
Right.
We know everybody. It takes time for people to process. That cycle of change you were talking about, the first step outside of the neutral zone towards the new beginning, I don't know if you remember what the word is. It's skepticism, So it's not happy embracing. It's, I don't know about this. And guess what? that's the way we approach it too. When we think about reopening the church, it's not like we're like, yes, let's go right now. There's a skepticism that says, will this work? Is this the right direction? But we are praying. We are seeking God to ask, what is the next step?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important thing as we've been talking about what that next step is. One of the big questions we've been asking ourselves is, what is it that makes church church?
Yeah.
Why are some churches rushing to get people back in the building where you really shouldn't be singing unless you're more than 6 feet apart? You
Right.
can't be greeting anybody on the way in. You can't greet anybody on the way out. Your kids can't get any kind of ministry in their special age groups. And we've kind of, as a group, we've said, we've stripped at that point so many things off of what it means to have that church experience together.
Yeah.
That's part of why we're not rushing into it. And instead we said, well, what is it that makes us a church anyway? And so, Brent, what do you think are the key components that we have to, as leaders, be offering to our people as a church, whether we meet or don't meet?
Yeah.
Basically.
What's so funny is that as you guys know me, I'm constantly reading and listening to podcasts and processing, and that's just my personality. And I've come up with 15 different ways to say the same thing I've discovered. But when I think about what makes us, a church, it is worship. Worship is an important part of what we do to encounter and experience the transcendent presence of God. That is critical, number one. Number two, I think it's community. It is getting together with others, which has been the missing piece at this point, but is also the piece that is challenging us to figure out how do we make that happen beyond these virtual hugs and video calls that we've had to do.
Yes.
And then the third thing is just mission. It's us being on mission together. Yes. And as I pieced these, like I said, I've come up with 15 different ways to say it. And you know what I came back down to? It's the mission statement that we wrote a few years ago that says we are going to connect with Jesus. There's your worship. We're going to connect with one another in fellowship and meaningful community, and we're going to connect with our community on mission. And really, it's just us continuing to be true to that expression, because that defines who we are and what we need to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we've still been worshiping.
Yeah.
It may look different. You may not sound so good, in your living room on a Sunday morning. And I miss.
You may not look so good because you're wearing pajamas. Come on, let's be real. Exactly. None of you are getting dressed, showered, and dressed for church right now. Jesus knows.
Yeah, that's right. And we've been on a mission. Like, I love hearing stories about people prayer walking in their neighborhoods, or people who are doing things for their neighbors and reaching out to their neighbors and dropping off meals. I mean, we've talked about the ways that we've seen our church be the church in their neighborhood, even in a way that maybe we hadn't before. So we've seen those two expressions really beautifully during this time. And like you said, now the missing link is, okay,
community.
How do we begin to actually have some form of connection and relationship?
And that's really, go ahead, Ryan.
We're in a waiting right now. We've been meeting in our families and homes for a while, and we want to get to where we can all gather together in church. But there's a chasm in between those, and we don't want to just jump across it and say, let's all meet and just hope nobody shows up with COVID and spreads it. So how do we, fill that gap?
And honestly, that's where a week ago on the Midweek Minute, we rolled out something that may have left a lot of questions in people's minds. It was just kind of a tease to say, this is for us what we would call maybe phase one in starting to get back together again. And we call it Ashworth at Home. And I want to just say this again. This, as this is not to be a replacement for getting back together someday. We are still working and doing everything we can to make sure that at some point in the future, we will have worship services together on a Sunday morning. However, by saying that, we're also saying that as we do this grand experiment, and that's really what this is, to see if it'll work, if the experiment works, this could be a functional and vital part of who we are even after we continue to meet together on Sundays in this building that I'm sitting in today. So it doesn't mean that this is just a temporary thing either. So basically, what we are asking and encouraging people to do through Ashworth at Home is, are you comfortable in inviting or joining one or possibly two other families to experience the weekly Ashworth worship service together? Now, we know that experience is going to be different for everyone. In fact, as I look at the two people on my screen, I know there are going to be two different expressions taking place of Ashworth at Home. So for me, Amy's on the bottom square, and I know when she does this, she's going to get together with people that passionately love to worship, just like she does. And so there's going to be singing, hopefully spaced about 12 feet apart. No, but there's going to be singing and hand raising and maybe some dancing. She's got a real desire for banners and streamers and stuff that may be taking place in her home. Who knows, Now, on the other square here, I know my friend Ryan, as much as he desires to be one of the vocalists on the Ashworth worship team,
I am not.
He is not. And, for him and maybe some of the people that he would meet with, sitting and listening to singing together might seem weird. Might be, so they can fellowship and they can interact and connect on a relational level during that time. And then when the message comes on, they can hit unmute and, kind of sit there and listen to the message together. And it doesn't matter.
You better not mute the worship. Just saying.
It'd be soft in the background.
It'd be soft. He'd use it as elevator music, so it'd be fine. But either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, the goal for us is to create and empower and encourage opportunities for us to break into that missing piece, which is meaningful community. And go ahead, Ryan. You were going to say something.
I was going to say, and for some people, it may be taking place in the home, in the living room. Like you talked about, you'd have no problem having people in your living room. For others, it might be figuring out a way to watch it in the driveway or in the garage or, putting a TV on a table there because they don't feel quite comfortable having people in their home. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you might be willing to make this happen. And there is no right way and there is no wrong way. It's just saying we were created for community. We're all hungering and thirsting for it. And we can't meet as a church of 200 people in the next couple of weeks. We don't know how long, but we maybe can meet as a church in groups of 10s all around the community. And so how can we make that happen? However you're willing to do it, that you feel comfortable.
And that's the expression, if you feel comfortable. We know that there are certain people in our congregation that would be in what's called the vulnerable demographic, the vulnerable community, and they should not do this. I think about my friend Scott Oswald, just going through a round of chemo and having a weakened immune system. It may not be to his advantage to do this yet. And you know what? Don't do it. If you are in that age group where you're still considered vulnerable, don't do it. We are not commanding or requesting anyone to do anything that would make you uncomfortable or put you at undue risk. But my family has been seeing some families lately, inviting some people over here and there, people we know and trust, Ashworth families. And I'm good with saying, hey, come over and let's process the worship service. Let's be a part of the Ashworth worship service together. And so in order to help that, I know some of you may be sitting there thinking, who's coming to my house at 9 a.m.? That's exactly right. I don't want any of you coming to my house at 9 a.m. because I'm not ready. So starting on May 31st, we are going to launch 3 premieres on both Facebook and YouTube, whichever platform you want. So we will continue to do the 9 o'clock as we have been for modern. We're going to adjust the classic service to 10 a.m., so to be right there in the middle. And then we're going to offer another modern premiere worship service at 11 a.m. So, if one of those works for you, great. And here's the great thing about technology. Let's say none of those work for you. You know what's amazing? You can meet together Sunday evening, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Friday, doesn't matter. And you just click over to our Facebook or YouTube page, and that exact worship service will still be there for you to click play on, to watch and enjoy together. We just think this is a natural first step for us in getting back to some community, but also looking at a way to begin to be the church dispersed and be Ashworth in our neighborhoods. And so we're going to ask people to begin praying about, would you be an Ashworth at Home host? Would you be willing to invite a family or two, whatever you're comfortable with, to join you at some time to be a part of that Ashworth worship experience? And if you're not willing to host, would you be willing to join if someone asked, or would you be willing to put pressure on someone you know that might be a host? Say, my home's not big enough. Let's go to your backyard. You have a great deck. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're asking. And, again, if you're not ready for this, we're not asking you to do anything as far as making yourself uncomfortable or putting you at risk. But we are asking, though, are there things that you can do that you are comfortable with that might allow you to start developing that meaningful community again, more than just a phone call or a Zoom call or whatever, more faith? Maybe it's a driveway conversation where you have a friend and you take lawn chairs and you go socially distance in somebody's driveway and you just go talk for an hour. And, is that something that you'd be willing to do? So we're really encouraging everyone to figure out what your comfort level and what you could do, if it's anything or nothing. And then just to throw this out there, one of the things we're hoping for is that in the future, this expands beyond just Ashworth families. Right now, it's just kind of an Ashworth family ask. But we're thinking, what would happen if you invited a neighbor over that may not go to church? I mean, Ryan, talk about the New Normal series, because we've got a lot packed into it. We've got some great things coming. Tell them what's coming in this New Normal series.
Yeah, we brainstormed all the different ways that we've read articles and listened to podcasts and heard about how families are struggling in different ways as all of life really stopped and pivoted so quickly. So we're going to talk about how people are trying to cope with all the change and how addiction is really taking root in a lot of people's lives because life got changed so much, they didn't know how to cope with it. We're going to talk about marriage and family issues, having your spouse with you all the time, having your kids with you all the time, that there's not a teacher.
It's not been all roses and buttercups for people, has it?
No, it's not amazing. There's financial stressors involved for many people with how this has impacted the entire economy. Trying to develop healthy rhythms when you have no boundaries between work and home and family time because you're all in the same house, and talking about finally spirituality and faith, because in the middle of all the chaos, for many people, it's been hard to feel like they are still connected with Jesus, because maybe like me, you were relying on that Sunday morning hour where you could take a breath and let other things fade away. And without that, for me, I love the online church experience, but sitting in my kitchen in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, drinking a coffee, it does not have the same impact on me as coming and being in the worship experience that we
with other people
have had for so many years at Ashworth. Yep. So we're going to tackle a lot of these issues that many people probably, as I spoke to them, thought, yeah, I'm struggling with that. And so we want to bring people into it. And it's not just going to be the three of us speaking about it. You're welcome. We actually got real experts to talk about that. And Brent, I think you know that list.
Yes, we've got, well, I'm not going to reveal it, but I will say what we're hoping for is next week, we're going to begin by addressing the subject of just mental health and how the pandemic has impacted people's mental health. And we've actually got one of our own from Ashworth, who is a national certified counselor and a licensed mental health professional, who's going to come in and sit down with me on a video call. And we're going to get to have a conversation to talk about how this has impacted you, how, and more importantly, how you can deal with all that you've been dealing with. And so as I say that, you may know people that might benefit from that. And so we want to encourage you, if they fit that, you know, we're going to give you tools that help you hopefully be able to reach out to those people. people. And so as we wrap up here, I just want to say, if you're willing to pray about being a host or being a host, we want to know. Ryan, right now on the chat window, is going to drop a link to a form where you will let us know. He didn't know I was going to say that, but he's going to do that by Sunday morning. And you're going to click on that link and say, hey, I'm interested in this. And why do we want you to do that? Because we want to put some tools in your hands. We're not going to give you 27 pages to read and all these guidelines. We just want to give you 3 or 4 questions that you may be able to share and ask with that group that you are meeting with, that just kind of helps take that message that week or that topic to a little bit deeper level. Let me close us out with a prayer this morning. God, thank you so much for even in this goofy, weird pandemic season, God, that's awful. It's horrible. People are dying, getting sick. It's terrible, God. But even through this, God, you are going to bring about good. And you are going to allow your church, the Church of Jesus Christ, to become even stronger, to become even better, to become a force in the world that really lifts up Jesus Christ and reaches our communities in ways that we never would have had possible before this pandemic. So God, I just pray for all those that are listening to this message today. God, prepare our hearts now as we're in this neutral zone, as we're thinking about the future, the fear, the resistance that we may have. God, give us those elastic hearts to be willing, even if we're skeptical, to lean forward into what this new normal might look like for us as a church and us personally in our faith journey with Jesus. God, I thank you for this church. I thank you for all that it means. I love this church, God. And when I say that, it means I love not this building, God. I love the people. I love everyone that's listening to this service and watching it online today. And God, that's a part and calls us this place home, because God, you have brought us together. We are a family, and those bonds are tight. And God, and you are going to do something amazing, not just at 5300 Ashworth Road, but God, we are going to be Ashworth Church all across the Des Moines metro, as you planted us in our neighborhoods to now going forward to be Ashworth at home. God, take this time today and just really allow us to process and be where you want us to be and respond as you want us to this morning. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.